Happy Thursday, mathematicians. Today we are going to be on our last lesson for this unit, and tomorrow will be our test. Make sure that you're reviewing the lessons that we've completed for this unit on multiplication and that you're reaching out and asking questions if you have any. Today for our math workshop, you're going to need your glue stick, pencil, highlighters, math notebook, your Envisions Thin workbook, that is your extra practice for your classwork, and you are going to need your blue resource folder. Remember, tomorrow is a resource folder pickup from Harvey's front office during the school day. Please make sure that your parents are planning to come to pick up your folders that you're going to need on Monday. Go ahead and open up that folder, and on the left side, take off the last two sheets. The lesson today is called Choose a Strategy to Multiply, and the practice page. Then place your clip back on your folder so you can clip the new teach pages that you're going to receive in the resource pickup tomorrow. Then close that and make sure it stays in your anchor binder and place it back in your basket. Then go ahead back to your notebook. Before today's lesson, you should have checked your classwork from yesterday, and yesterday's lesson was on mental math and compensation. Make sure that you remember that in the lesson yesterday, you were asked to complete your practice question showing me the work and then writing your reflection paragraph. That is all shown on our sticky note and told to you in the lesson. Many of you have not done that yet, so make sure that you submit the completed classwork notebook pages. We're gonna go ahead and turn the page, and today we're going to be labeling our pages, page 52 on the left and page 53 on the right. Before we glue our pages down, we're going to go back to the table of contents to get it nice and organized. So we are on page 52, so go ahead and write that. And then today is the last lesson, which was called Choose a Strategy to Multiply. And today's date is 10-1-20, first day of October. Turn back to today's pages, and you're going to use your glue stick to get this glued in. Remember, you can pause at any point during our video to make sure that you are keeping organized and getting everything recorded. Go ahead and turn your paper over. And then use your practice page. Do the same thing and place on the right. So for the majority of our chapter, we have been focusing on learning strategies to multiply a multi-digit factor by a single-digit factor. So if you flip back to some of the lessons that we've completed, we started with multiplying multiples, so skip counting by one of our multiples or using the zeros trick to help in that multiplication. We then moved on to how do we estimate our products, so using our previous lesson on rounding to help us try to come up with an answer that is pretty close to the exact answer, so we can then use that when we start talking about is the answer considered to be reasonable or not. We then learned how to use partial product. That was taking one of our factors and pulling it apart so we could have smaller pieces to the end result, so parts of the answer. And then we went into how to use an area model. An area model is when we were talking about our rectangle that we divided into the sections that represented the different values or the different digits within the number. And then we were able to place those partial products back together to find the actual answer. And then yesterday, we did our mental math and compensation. And this is when we were using strategies of our understanding of number sense to come up with an answer, or I should say a factor that was close to the original, but it would help us speed up the process of solving with multiplication. So we're going to be moving on to our last and final lesson, and this is something that your parents are going to be familiar with because we call this our mommy-daddy method. It is the traditional algorithm of multiplying. So the way that your parents and Mrs. Ling learned when we were back in school, we were only taught one way and that was it. And there was no teaching of the understanding of why we followed a certain pattern of multiplying our place values. We just followed the steps. So we're going to be teaching you this final way, which your parents might have shown you previously, but this is the first lesson in introducing that to the rest of us. So go ahead and highlight your title. And then we said multiplying with regrouping is considered our traditional algorithm, but we also refer to it in our class and in all fourth grade classes as the mommy-daddy method. The mommy-daddy method, like I said, is just in reference to the way that your mom and your dad have learned it when they were in school. We're going to go ahead and down to the next portion in our teach box, and it says we're going to use place value to multiply with regrouping. So we're going to jump right in with our first example. So it says to multiply 7 times 63. So we're going to box this expression that they're having us look at closely, and then we're going to go through the series of steps of how to do this. With multiplication, we always want to start with estimating to find an approximate answer before we find the actual answer. And that way we know if our actual answer is considered to be reasonable or does it make sense to the actual information. So we're doing the estimating. So we had originally had, and I'm going to just rewrite this so it's set up the way that we are used to, the larger factor on top multiplied by the smaller factor. And this is because it doesn't matter the order of my factors because the product will remain the same. We know that anytime we're asked to round or to estimate, we pull our numbers to the side. We look at the factor by finding our place, looking next door. 5 or more, we're going to raise the score. 4 or less, going to let it rest. So this is where I'm pulling it, and the EST just means this is going to be my estimate. So it's 4 or less, going to let the 6 rest. So I'm going to say the 6 stays the same. Look to the right, 0 is in sight. That 3 turns to a 0. So 63 is rounded down to the number 60. My single digit gets pulled to the side, and it stays the same. Now I can solve using my zeros trick. So the 0 comes out, goes directly in the product. I'm left with my basic fact. 6 times 7 is the product of 42. So 42 gets placed before the 0, which means the answer is 420, which is what answer that they received. Step 2 is going to go into the actual solving of multiplication using the regrouping and place value. So step 1 tells me that I have to multiply the ones place. So multiplying the ones place, I'm going to actually use my yellow, the lightest color I have, and highlight the digits that are considered in the ones place. So I highlighted the 3 and the 7. So when I multiply the 3 times 7, I should get to the product of 21, but I know that having an answer that is a 2-digit, but it can't go into a 1-digit area, I have to do the regrouping. So my 1 gets recorded, my 2 gets regrouped to the next place value. So it says regroup or record the 1 below the ones column and the 2 tens above the tens column. So it will now show that 7 times 3 ones equals 21 ones, and that's what we just finished regrouping. The next step is our final step for this problem because it's only 2 digits in my factor. So now I'm going to be asked to multiply the tens place. So I'm going to multiply what's in the tens place, which is the 6, and the same place value on the bottom. So I'm multiplying 6 times 7. 6 times 7 is 42. So we can see that it says 7 times 6 tens is 42 tens. We have to add the regrouped number, so 42 plus 2 gives me 44, so I record the 44 in front of the one that was already placed, so I can show that 44 was written down. So 7 times 63 is equal to the product of 441, and because this is our final answer, we then have to make the comparison to the estimated answer. And the estimated answer and the actual answer are very close, so we would consider this to be reasonable. So we're going to box and just say we've checked the work by placing a check mark. Now we're going to do some practice problems using this standard algorithm following the steps. So we're going to start with 761 times 5. You were asked to find the estimate or the rounded number first. So 761, if I look at it, I know that I'm rounding to the greatest place value. So 7, we look next door at the 6. So 5 or more, going to raise the score. 4 or less, going to let it rest. It's a 6, so that means I'm going to raise the score of the 7, making it an 8. Look to the right, zeros in sight. There's 2 spots, so there's 2 zeros. The 5 gets brought over, and it doesn't change, and now I'm multiplying by 5. Use the zeros trick. 2 zeros go directly into the answer. I'm left with the basic fact of 8 times 5. 8 times 5 gives me the product of 40, which gets written in front of the 2 zeros. And my estimated product is 4,000. Now I can actually solve my problem. Because I already did some marking up around it, you might want to rewrite your problem again and even want to rewrite it a little bit larger so you have room to do your work. Anytime you do your work, you can use an additional piece of paper to kind of spread out your information or to keep it nice and organized. If you have graph paper at home, using the boxes to place your digits for each place value might be beneficial for your organization as well. So we're going to start by looking at our problem. I usually lasso just to keep my vision to see which ones or which numbers I need to multiply. So I'm going to go to my ones place first. So I'm multiplying 5 times 1 to give me the product of 5. Moving to the next place value, I'm multiplying the same factor 5 by the tens place. So I'm relassoing just to kind of keep my eye trained of where I'm multiplying. So 5 times 6 gives me the product of 30. So this is when I have to place what's in the ones, regroup what was in the tens of that answer. Now I'm once again looking at the 5 multiplied by the next place value of 7. 5 times 7 gives me the product of 35 plus the regroup 3, which is 38. Place the comma between the hundreds and thousands to know the actual answer is 3,805. When I compare it to the estimated number, I consider this to be reasonable. So we're going to write reasonable and then give it a check that we checked our work. Moving to the next number, once again, we're finding the estimate first. So we're going to pull our numbers to the side. We're underlining the greatest place value, looking next door. 5 or more are going to raise the score, so that means that underlying number is being bumped up by 1 to change it to an 8. Look to the right, zeros in sight, so I start at the arrow, 1, 2, 3 place values, which means 3 zeros. Pull the single factor directly to the side because that does not change. And now I can multiply using the zeros trick. I cross out 1, 2, 3 zeros, put those directly in the product. Then I lasso my basic fact that's left. 8 times 4 gives me the product of 32. 32 gets written in front of the zeros. Place the comma between the hundreds and the thousands. So my estimated product is 32,000. To solve for the actual problem, once again, I'm going to rewrite the original problem just a little bit more spread out so I can do my lassoing. I'm always going to multiply by the ones place, and then I move up. So I'm going to multiply by lassoing 4 times 4. 4 times 4 gives me the product of 16. So I record the 6, regroup my 1. I once again start from the bottom to the next place value. So 4 times 1. 4 times 1 gives me the product of 4, plus the 1 is the answer of 5. Once again, I start from the bottom to the next place value. So 4 times 8, 4 times 8 gives me the product of 32. So I record the 2, regroup the 3, and then I have one more place value. So I lasso the bottom number to the next place value, 4 times 7. 4 times 7 gives me the product of 28 plus the 3. So that is 31. And I record the 31 directly in the front of my answer. Now I count over to the third place to know where my comma goes. So 1, 2, 3, place the comma. And now I compare my actual answer to my estimated answer. 31,256 is very close to 32,000. So once again, we write the word reasonable. So it is pretty close that the answer makes sense, and we've checked our work. Moving to the next one, we're doing the same work again. Pull your factor to the side. We are going to round, so underline the greatest place value. Look next door, 5 or more, going to raise the score, 4 or less, going to let it rest. So it's 5 or more, so that means we're going to raise the score of the 3 to change to a 4. Look to the right, zeros in sight, so we start at the arrow, 1, 2 place values that turn to zeros. And then the 8 gets brought over without any change. Now we can use our zeros trick. So 1, 2 zeros in our answer. Place the zeros directly in the product. Then you're going to lasso the basic fact that's left to multiply. So 8 times 4 gives me the product of 32. Place the 32 in your answer. Put the comma between the hundreds and the thousands place. So your estimated product is 3,200. Now we need to solve for the actual answer. So once again, I bring down my original problem to spread it out. And I'm multiplying always by the ones place with the ones place at the top. So I go from bottom to the top. 8 times 8 gives me the product of 64. So I record the 4, regroup my 6. Once again, I go from the bottom ones place to the next place value at the top. So 8 times 7. 8 times 7 gives me the product of 56 plus the 6 is going to be 62. So I record the 2, regroup my 6. My next step is to multiply from the ones place at the bottom to the next place value at the top. So I lasso the 8 times 3. 8 times 3 gives me the product of 24 plus the 6 gives me a product of 30, which then gets placed at the front of my answer. The last thing to do for this number is to place a comma between the thousands and the hundreds place. And now we can compare the actual answer of 3,024 to 3,200. Once again, this is considered to be a close value, so we write this is considered reasonable. And then give a check mark. So you are learning how to multiply using our place value method with regrouping, which we call mommy-daddy method, and it is a very systematic set of steps to follow. So make sure that you rewind the video to watch it again if you are having any questions. We're going to move on to our example with our word problems. So our example states, on Monday, Paulo sold 21 tickets to the dance. On Tuesday, he sold 3 times as many as he sold on Monday. On Wednesday, he sold twice as many tickets as he sold on Tuesday. How many total tickets did Paulo sell in the 3 days? So we have 3 different amounts that we have to be focused on. So we have to code our text. So we're going to box the keyword. So Monday is going to be one of the days. It gives me the amount of tickets. So the first thing I'm going to do is to pull that over to the side. So Monday was 21 tickets. Moving on, it says Tuesday, he sold 3 times as many tickets as he sold on Monday. So when I know that it's 3 times Monday's amount, I'm going to write Tuesday is 3 times as many as Monday. Well, if I know Monday was 21, I know that the missing factor is going to be 21. The next part we're going to record, it says on Wednesday, so this is the 3rd day, he sold twice, so we have to know that twice means 2, as many tickets as he sold on Tuesday. So if we record Wednesday's name, and we know 2 times as many as the answer for Tuesday. So we have to solve to know what the missing factor is. So as Tuesday. So we can pull our numbers to the side. So we can pull it up to the top. 21 times 3. So we're solving to find out the amount on Tuesday. We use our strategy of multiplying with place value and regrouping. 3 times 1 gives me the product of 3. 3 times 2 gives me the product of 6. So on Tuesday, they had 63 tickets, which then also means that I can bring down that number to be the second factor for my Wednesday's date. So now we have to solve for Wednesday's date. So if I pull this information off to the side, so 63 times 2, we follow the same strategy, multiplying the ones on the bottom by the ones at the top. 2 times 3 gives me the product of 6. 2 times 6 gives me the product of 12. So our answer is 126 for Wednesday's amount. Now looking back at the final question, it said, how many total tickets did Paulo sell in the 3 days? So looking at my keyword for total, that means I need to add the 3 values. So if I bring them to the side, we had 21 tickets on Monday, 63 tickets for Tuesday, and 126 tickets for Wednesday. So we're going to add those 3 values, make sure that you have lined up your place values. 1 plus 3 gives me the answer of 4, plus 6 is 10, so I record the 0, regroup my 1 above the next place value. Then I add 1 plus 2 is 3, 3 plus 6 is 9, 9 plus 2 is 11, so I record the 1, regroup the 10. Then I add my 1 that I regrouped plus the 1 down in the hundreds place, and that gives me the total of 2 for the hundreds place. In order for this to count as a correct answer, I need to remember that I'm looking for the label in the question. The label said how many total tickets, so the label is the word tickets. And then I can circle to say this is my final answer. The last problem is your practice problem. So it says at the math club ceremony, there were 17 tables. So I'm circling the amount with a label with 8 people seated. So 8 people seated at each table. Each is always a keyword. Each guest received 2 certificates. How many certificates were distributed at the ceremony? So we need to organize our information to know how we're solving. So we first need to know what was the amount at a table. So looking, it said there were 17 tables with 8 people. So if we know that we had 17 tables of 8 people, so amount at tables, we are solving to find this answer first. So pulling it to the side, we can stack to use our strategy of multiplying with place values. Multiplying the 8 times 7. 8 times 7 gives me the answer of 56. So I record the 6, regroup my 5. Multiplying the next place value, always start from the bottoms 1 and go to the next place value. So 8 times 1. 8 times 1 gives me the product of 8. Plus the 5 I regrouped is 13, which I record in front. So then I use that answer to plug into my organized problem. So there's 136 people at those 17 tables. So we need to look at the next part. It says each guest received 2 certificates. So we're going to find the number of certificates. So we're going to take the amount of people. So we said this is 136. Each of those people received 2 certificates. So we're finding the total of that amount. So we're multiplying 136 times the 2 certificates. So we start with multiplying from the bottom one's place to the top one's place. So 2 times 6. 2 times 6 gives me the product of 12. So I record the 2, regroup the 1. Then we multiply the bottom one's place by the tens place. 2 times 3 is 6, plus the 1 is 7. Then we move to the next place value, multiplying 2 times the 1. 2 times 1 gives me the product of 2. So my answer is 272. So in order for me to have a correct answer, I need to remember I have to find the label. So it said how many certificates. So certificates is my label. So there were 272 certificates. Today, for the final part of your notebook work, you need to be writing your reflection paragraph. This is you recording the set of steps in order to solve a multiplication problem using this mommy-daddy method. So you'll have to start by using your transitional words that first you are going to look at, and then tell me the place value that you look at to multiply, and then continue on until you have 3 to 5 sentences describing how to solve a problem with today's strategy. Remember, today is your last lesson for this unit. Tomorrow you will be tested on all of the information that you have learned. So make sure you are reviewing those other strategies using partial product and area model. And when we use that distributive portion of multiplication, and how do we estimate products and multiply by multiples. When you're done reviewing your notebook, you're going to finish up with your classwork page in your Envisions workbook. So make sure that you are looking at the correct page. This is page 39 and 40, and you're completing the even numbers today. So remember that this is using the strategy you were taught in the lesson. So using the mommy-daddy method for number 2, number 4, number 6, 8, 10, 12, and 14. I would suggest using a separate piece of notebook paper. That way you can spread out your numbers and spread out your work, so you can multiply using the lassoing method to keep track of how you're multiplying with a place value. Then turn your paper over. You're going to circle number 16, 18, 20, and 22. So remember, today you are going to be finishing up your reflection statement in your notebook and both sides of your classwork page. So you will have 4 pages to attach to your completed assignment. Tomorrow is our unit test. Please make sure you're reaching out and asking questions on any of the lessons that you might have any questions for.